Today is Tuesday, October 20. My name is Pastor Anthony, and this is Wilderness Wanderings. Today our text comes from Nehemiah 2. By night I went out through the valley gate toward the Jackal Well and the Dung Gate, examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down, and its gates, which had been destroyed by fire. That's Nehemiah 2, verse 13. Sunday evening, our high school youth gathered for a socially distanced campfire to worship and talk about spiritual disciplines. On this particular night, the discipline of gratitude is what we were talking about. And if you'd like to learn more about that, I put a link in the notes or in the written form of this devotion. You're welcome to click on that. But anyway, we started that spiritual discipline conversation by recognizing that the methods of being formed in the Christian faith that we've long relied on, like Sunday worship, are not quite as reliable as they once were for Christian formation. Some might even say that they've been broken down. Just think of all the spiritual disciplines we practiced together in worship as a Christian community pre-COVID-19. There was prayer, scripture reading, giving, confession, gratitude, singing, praise and lament, community and fellowship, silence, and more. All of that happened in worship, and these weekly practices of all these disciplines in worship formed us in the Christian life and in Christian character over the years. It really did, and it really does. Worship is not only something that we offer to God, you see. It's also one of the means through which God forms Christ in us through the working and power of His Spirit. But now this central practice of Sunday worship, which once carried so much of the freight of our Christian discipleship and all these other spiritual practices, well, it's broken down. Not completely, of course. We worship, we really do. But it's also not quite what it was. And while technology is a good stand-in, some things, like the support, encouragement, and accountability of Christian community, simply cannot be digitally mediated forever. As the practice of Sunday worship has weakened, then, in our communal life, and all these weekly reinforcements of the spiritual disciplines with it, so have our defenses against our old enemies that Pastor Michael mentioned yesterday, namely the world, the flesh, and the devil. In terms of the world, you think of it, we get busy and distracted with all the other pressing demands of work, school, life in a pandemic, and the ever-urgent notifications popping and buzzing through on our devices. And eventually we start to slide away from worship and Christian practice, slowly. Never all at once, of course, but bit by bit, Sundays easily get filled with all the other things that have always been vying for our attention, our adoration, and ourselves. Then there's the enemy of the flesh. We maybe sleep in on Sundays, we don't feel like doing worship, or we just plumb forget to engage in worship or the other Christian practices. Carving out space for discipleship and for the Christian life and for conversations with God and for worship is hard. Lots of other things are lots easier. And there's also the enemy of the devil. As C.S. Lewis reminds us in the Screwtape Letters, there are indeed forces at work in this world that give aid to the seemingly benign churn of our fleshly lives and the world's pressures, helping them to erode our Christian practice with the relentless force of waves that pound the shore. So, perhaps it's time to take a silent walk with God, to go out and examine the defenses, as Nehemiah did. Are the walls of Christian habit and discipline broken down in your life? Have the gates to your heart and mind that put a conscious check on what gets in and what comes out been burned up, like the gates of Jerusalem? The restoration of our spiritual practices starts at just that same place that Nehemiah started his restoration of Jerusalem's defenses. First, we have to take honest stock of where we're at, what we've lost, and what we're up against. So, take time to examine just those things in your life today. What spiritual habits and practices have been lost or broken down in your life since the beginning of this pandemic? Take stock and bring it to God in prayer. As you journey on, go with the blessing of God. May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you wherever He may send you. May He guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May He bring you home rejoicing at the wonders He has shown you. May He bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors.